There was a lot of emotional electricity surrounding the city art scene during the early 80s. Opportunities for women were coming up on two fronts. The boys' clubs were being confronted with their embedded discrimination against women, and women were establishing alternative venues for showing and selling their work. And they were getting a lot of attention. And they were getting a lot of very positive attention, which made it very hard for the boys in the boys' clubs to keep saying the same old tired line, which was, show me a woman artist who has good work, and I'll show a woman artist. In the context of a life, for about 5 minutes, I really thought everything was possible. Those were very exciting times. And two precedents came out of that brief period for me. I became committed to experiential painting, and I found my visual voice. My elaborate creative process is about interpretation at every stage. When I first came to the island, I fell in love with wildflowers. A very dear friend of mine who was coming to see the Maine that I'd fallen in love with made me think about how I was going to bring those wildflowers into every room of our house so that their presence would transform our little humble house. So I got every container I could find, and I filled them half full of water and put them in the truck, and I set out to fill the truck with flowers. And on my way home, I decided to stop at the bank at the drive-in window and cash a check. And the teller was so charmed by all the flowers in the truck that she got everybody in the bank to come and look. And they all said, oh my God, where did you get those? That was an extraordinary way of looking at those, and people were seeing them for the first time. So I started really looking deeply into the things I was falling in love with. Flowers, objects, rocks, and creatures, with the goal of depicting them so lovingly with such lavish detail that the layers of color would become so luminous that they appeared to glow against contrasting textures and values in the background, making them hyper-realized and making their ingenuity undeniable, because it is undeniable that they are perfectly honed for their task. Every detail of their existence is about their survival and their procreation. There's nothing superfluous about them. But more than that, I wanted them to speak to larger still life issues of desire, human folly, time passing, death, to name a few significant still life issues. The thing that I'm doing right now that most interests me are the reflective areas of my paintings. Janice.
Yeah, I'm really, I guess, most curious about your process for composition.
That's a very, very ambitious piece for me. And I was ready for that because I wanted to take this interest that I have about degrees of transparency and degrees of reflectivity. And wax paper just seemed to bring that conversation to the front of the room. And then all I can tell you is that when I did this one, I had just done a big still life like that one. And I needed something real simple. I didn't want a lot of interaction with objects. I just wanted to feature something and make it glow. And I thought, if I could make garlic glow, that would be great. That would be an extraordinary presentation of garlic. That would be those wildflowers in the truck. People would see garlic in a new way. And that was simple because it was just two garlic on a table. So I needed that kind of simplicity. And when I got to Maine, the things that I fell in love with here were about this place. And I said to a couple of people, I can't paint flowers. Everybody has painted flowers. Redu-tape, who could top what's out there? I can't paint flowers. And whoever I said this to, I think it was Betsy Lewin, she said, nobody did it like you. And I thought, well, so how am I going to do it? And that makes it it can't be better. So what could I add to that conversation visually about flowers? And that's why it was such an epiphany for me when all the women came out to admire came to the window when I was at the bank to admire those flowers that they'd been seeing all their lives. They saw them in a new context. They saw them crammed into the cab of a truck. And I thought, that's it. That's it. Everybody looks, nobody sees. If I can love them so much, and we are talking about love, if I can love them so much that I make them glow and I show more detail than even exists, because they're never just one flower. They're a composite of many, many flowers that I've been looking at through their whole life cycles. If I'm doing wild iris, I have wild iris all over the studio at various stages of their life cycle. And that's another thing about painting something that's alive. And I'll just give you an example of a lunar moth. They're very, very, very beautiful. And you hardly ever see them. You're not supposed to see them. And one was in my studio one morning, and I thought, this can't be good because he's still here. So I got him onto a piece of paper. I was working on a still life at the time. I didn't touch him. I knew not to touch him. I put him on my drawing board right near the other objects that were going to be in my still life. And I pushed him off, and he was still alive. And then I painted him. He was dying while he came to life on my paper. And in my heart, I actually felt like the Indians that I knew when I was a kid, not personally, but I knew the Sioux Indian had a ceremony where they would have a little gratitude ceremony when they killed the buffalo, because the buffalo sustained their lives, and they just wanted to thank that animal they had just killed for giving up their life. And that's the kind of thing that's in my heart when something is dying that I am painting, because it's almost like while their life is ebbing, it's coming to life on the paper. It's weird. It's special too. It's really wonderful. I don't feel that way about tables and plates and things like that, but live specimens, I really am very, very emotionally invested in when I'm painting them. And I look at them a long time. A lobster takes about 60, 75 hours for me to paint. And by the time I've finished with that lobster, I'm thinking in my heart of that kind of little gratitude thing, that lobster was so beautiful for me to paint. Scott and I attended a lecture in Rockport on Sunday by Jerry Saltz.
Yes.
Oh, you were there? It was fun, wasn't it?
It was amazing.
Yeah. And his wife, Roberta Smith. They're both New York City art critics. And I want to give you a couple of takeaway quotes from them. So here's Jerry Saltz. This is actually what he led off with. He said, "Art explores and alters consciousness simultaneously." I like this next one because it's pretty much what I've already said about experience. Art is about experience, one of the most important forms of knowledge. And then he asks two questions. He says, can you embed thought in material? Can you embed emotions in objects? I didn't answer him, but I'm answering you. My answer is that I always hope that's what I'm doing. Thank you.
Nice.